This lecture is about the reproductive system. I'll start with a quick overview and then focus on the male reproductive system. As with the urinary and digestive systems, the reproductive system has primary and accessory reproductive organs. The primary sex organs, or gonads, include the testes in the male and the ovaries in the female. The gonads produce sex cells called gametes and secrete sex hormones. Gametes include both the sperm or the egg. Both the sperm and the egg contain half the total number of chromosomes in a complete individual. So they have actually 23 chromosomes, N equals 23, and they're said to be haploid. When the egg and the sperm unite, the fertilized egg has 46 chromosomes, so N equals 46, and the fertilized egg is said to be diploid. Accessory reproductive organs include ducts, glands, and external genitalia, and these actually aid in reproduction. The sex hormones include testosterone, which is the major hormone made in the male, and estrogen, and progesterone, which are the major hormones made in the female. It's important to note that males make small amounts of estrogen, and females make small amounts of testosterone. This is a mid-sagittal view of the male reproductive system. We're going to start with the male. So if we take a look, sperm production starts here in the testes. So this is where sperm are produced. From the testes, the sperm are going to travel through a series of tubes into larger tubes called the epididymis. And from the epididymis, the sperm are going to travel up through the vas deferens or ductus deferens, and then the ductus deferens is going to loop over the ureter, right here, the ureter, and then proceed down onto the posterior part of the bladder. This is the bladder here, where it's going to widen a bit in what's called the ampulla of the ductus deferens. Ampulla just means an enlargement. And it will dump through the ejaculatory duct into the urethra, where it will eventually leave the body. Now, along the way, the sperm is going to encounter secretions by accessory organs. So there are accessory organs or glands that help the sperm along its path. And those include the seminal vesicles, which you can see right here. So secretions are added to the sperm. Then we have the prostate gland here, which is right here. That's going to add secretions. And finally, the bulbourethral glands right here will add secretions. You'll notice that the testes are actually inside a sac, which is called the scrotum. The scrotum consists of fat, muscles, and connective tissue, and it lies outside of the body. So again, if we were to follow the pathway from the testes, it would be from the testes to the epididymis, to the ductus deferens, to the urethra. This is an anterior view of the male reproductive system, and we're going to take another look at the scrotum here. So the scrotum, again, is really a sac of skin, connective tissue, muscle, and fat, which surround and support the testes. So again, here's the scrotum. It's this area here that surrounds the testes. So you'll notice that the scrotum again consists of skin, connective tissue, and muscle. So let's take a look at the two types of muscle that actually support and surround the testes. The first is the cremaster muscle. Oops, let me go back there for a sec. The cremaster muscle right here, and you can see it. So the cremaster muscle is actually skeletal muscle. And it arises from the internal oblique muscles. When the cremaster muscle contracts, if you take a look, you can see that it will bring the scrotum closer to the body wall. Oops, sorry about that. The other muscle that's in the scrotum is called the dartos muscle. And you can see that here, it surrounds it. The dartos muscle is actually smooth muscle. And what happens to the dartos muscle is that when it's cold, it becomes wrinkled. And the wrinkling actually decreases the surface area that's available for heat loss. So if you think about it again, you have the cremaster muscles which pull the testes closer to the body. And that keeps the testes warm. And you also have the dartos muscles that wrinkle up when it's cold, reducing the area available for heat loss. So both of these muscles work to regulate the temperature within the testes. And why would we need to do that? In fact, why are the testes outside of the body? This is very different than females, where the ovaries are inside the body and protected. Well, it just so happens that the temperature within the body is 36.2 degrees centigrade. And the temperature in the testes is 33.2 degrees centigrade. So it's about 3 degrees cooler in the testes outside of the body than inside the body. This is important because this cooler temperature is necessary for sperm production. So again, it needs to be cooler in the testes in order for sperm production to occur, and this is how it happens, by having them outside of the body. Now, just a couple of other structures while we're looking at this picture, you'll notice that the testes, along with the muscles and the spermatic artery, spermatic vein, and ductus deferens are all enclosed in what's known as the spermatic cord. And the cord actually goes through the body wall. As it goes through the muscle, it stays in its intact form as a cord. But once it gets into the body cavity, it splits open, where the spermatic artery and vein head upward, and the vas deferens, or the ductus deferens, dumps into the back of the bladder. So let's look at the testes more closely. The testes is about 1.5 inches long and about 1 inch wide in a human. The testes itself is surrounded by two tissues. The outer tissue is called the tunica vaginalis. This is the outer layer around the testes. And this is actually part of the peritoneum. So this is a serous membrane that's derived from the peritoneum. The inner layer is called the tunica albuginea. And this is actually a tough fibrous capsule. Oops, sorry, fibrous capsule. It's not writing there. Which extends inward. So you can see the tunica albuginea extends inward and forms these lobules. And it can form anywhere from 250 to 300 lobules. Each lobule consists of 1 to 4 seminiferous tubules. And the seminiferous tubules are actually where the sperm is made. So again, the tunica albuginea forms the lobules, and in each lobule is 1 to 4 seminiferous tubules. So if we take a look here, the seminiferous tubules can be seen over here on a photomicrograph. And if we take a look at that, this is the tube, and inside here is the lumen. So the cells that make up the tube make the sperm, and they're released into the lumen. You'll also notice that there is another cell called the interstitial cell, and these are the cells that make testosterone. These make testosterone. So if we take a look now at the pathway of sperm now, we can see that it starts in the seminiferous tubules. So here we might just want to add, seminiferous tubules instead. And from there, the sperm are going to go to the tubulus rectus, which is this little straight area here. From the tubulus rectus, it's going to go to the rete testes. Oops, sorry about that. To the rete testes. And from here, from the rete testes, it's going to go to the efferent ductule, which is a straight part right here. And from the efferent ductule, it's going to enter into the epididymis, which is this twisted tube. The epididymis, if stretched out, would be about 20 feet long. It is highly coiled. From the epididymis, the sperm is going to enter the spermatic cord. Sorry, my pen is. And from there, it's going to enter the ductus deferens and then finally into the urethra and out of the penis. We said that testosterone was produced by the interstitial cells of the seminiferous tubules. Testosterone levels are low at birth, but after puberty they accelerate greatly. Testosterone is responsible in the male for sexual maturation, secondary sex characteristics such as a lower voice, chest, pubic, and axillary hair, and also a sex drive. Testosterone is necessary for normal sperm development. This is a posterior view of the penis, and its role is to deliver sperm to the female reproductive tract. So if we take a look, you'll notice down here we have the testes where the sperm is produced. Then it travels up through the epididymis, up through the vas deferens, loops over the ureter, expands here, which is called the ampulla of the ductus deferens, and then empties into the urethra where it leaves the penis. Remember that there are accessory glands along the way that contribute secretions that help the sperm reach its destination. So such as the seminal glands, which you can see here and here, the prostate gland, remember, which is going to be producing some secretions, and lastly the bulbourethral glands. In the penis, there are two types of what's called erectile tissue. And this tissue is actually a spongy network of connective tissue and smooth muscle with lots of space for blood vessels. So what happens is when the blood vessels dilate or enlarge, the blood flows into the penis and it makes this erectile tissue rigid. There are two types. The first type is called the corpora cavernosa, and you can see that this is really the erectile tissue on the outside of the penis. This tissue, when it fills with blood, actually makes the penis rigid. On the inside is the corpora spongiosum, and this is this very narrow level of erectile tissue around the urethra. And what this does is when the penis becomes rigid on the outside from the corpora cavernosa, it prevents the urethra from being squished shut, because when this fills up with blood, it closes in on the urethra. So the corpus spongiosum itself becomes rigid, and it keeps the urethra open so that the sperm can leave. So how does an erection actually occur? Well, the testes are innervated by both the sympathetic and parasympathetic division of the nervous system. But during an erection, it is actually the parasympathetic division of the nervous system that fires. As a result of this causes the release of nitric oxide, which some of you might remember is a gas, but also acts as a neurotransmitter. And nitric oxide relaxes the smooth muscle of arterioles in the penis. Once the smooth muscles relax, it causes the blood vessel to dilate, so we get vasodilation of the blood vessels in the penis, and that causes the corpus spongiosum to fill up with blood and become erect. The corpus cavernosa also fills up with blood and causes the erection of the penis. When the erectile tissue enlarges, it compresses or closes off the drainage veins that are in the penis. And so the blood can't get out of the penis and it remains rigid and enlarged. And it can now penetrate the female reproductive tract. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting about this whole process, if you remember from earlier when we were talking about blood vessels, only the sympathetic innervates the smooth muscle of blood vessels. That's called sympathetic tone. But here is one exception in the body where the parasympathetic nervous system innervates the smooth muscle. Now, what happens after that? Well, you get ejaculation. In ejaculation, it is the sympathetic division that actually fires, and this is actually a reflex of the spinal cord. And so glands contract during ejaculation. The bladder sphincter closes, so there's no urine in the urethra, and the smooth muscle in the penis contracts. And all of this results in semen being expelled. Now, afterwards, what happens is that the blood vessels constrict, which allows the blood to leave the veins, and the penis becomes flaccid. So let's take a look at some of the accessory glands, which I've already mentioned. And we'll start with the seminal vesicle, which lies on the posterior wall of the bladder and secretes about 60% of the volume of semen. By the way, semen is actually sperm, plus the fluids released by the glands. Okay, so by the glands we mean the seminal vesicles, but also the prostate and bulbourethral glands. So that's what semen is. Seminal vesicles secrete several things in the fluid they release. The first of it is a very viscous or thick alkaline fluid. And this alkaline fluid actually protects sperm from the acidic environment of the female reproductive tract. So again, it protects sperm from the acidic environment just going to write ENV, of the female, this is a female symbol, reproductive tract. If you remember, the female reproductive tract is very acidic. And when the pH gets below 6, this decreases the mobility of sperm. So it slows the sperm down. So if the pH is too low, the sperm can't move, which means they won't get to their destination. Another element released by the seminal vesicles is fructose and ascorbic acid. Both of these are energy supplies, or a source of energy for the sperm. They can be used to make ATP. Remember, the sperm is traveling very minimally. It only has its DNA. It doesn't really carry with it a source of energy. And so that's why it's important that it gets a source from the seminal vesicles. Another substance released by the seminal vesicles is coagulating enzyme, or vesiculase. And the way that vesiculase works is that it coagulates the semen just after it is released. So it coagulates semen. So just after ejaculation. Now this is important because the semen has a very long way to travel through the female reproductive tract, and it won't get there unless it has mass. It has thickness to it. And so that's what vesiculase does. It actually gives semen its mass so that it can move forward. The last thing released by the seminal vesicles is called prostaglandins, and you might remember these as being pain chemicals. But in this case, what they do is decrease the viscosity of the mucus that's guarding the entrance to the uterus. So decreases the viscosity of the mucus that guards the entrance to the uterus. At the entrance of the uterus is a very thick layer of mucus, and its purpose is to prevent bacteria and other things from entering the uterus. So the prostaglandins actually become active a certain amount of time after ejaculation, and that happens to coincide when the semen reaches the uterus. When this happens, the prostaglandins decreases the viscosity, makes it thinner so that it's easier for the sperm to basically move from the thick semen into the uterus. Prostaglandins also cause reverse peristalsis. So what that is it moves the sperm up through the female reproductive tract. Now remember that the seminal vesicles join the ductus deferens to form the ejaculatory duct, and from here sperm and seminal fluid mix to enter the urethra. Next is the prostate gland, which kind of wraps around the urethra just inferior to the bladder. It has a kind of a milky, slightly acidic fluid, and it contains citrate. Citrate is also a nutrient or an energy source for the sperm. It contains another chemical called fibrinolysin. Fibrinolysin liquefies the coagulated semen. So remember that the semen is fairly thick. The sperm is trapped in there. So in order for the sperm to swim free, that semen has to be liquefied, and that's what fibrinolysin does. Another component is prostate-specific antigen, or PSA. This activates the sperm by enhancing sperm mobility. So remember, the sperm now, which is in the uterus, is going to have to move through the uterus and up through the fallopian tubes. Secretions from the prostate account for about a third of the semen volume. Remember, we said that the seminal vesicles accounts for about 60%. So now we have 60% and 33%, and all of this is going to enter the urethra through the prostate gland. Lastly, we have the accessory glands called the bulbourethral glands. These are very small, They're inferior to the prostate, and they produce a very thick, clear mucus that is going to neutralize any acidity in the urine. And remember that sperm slow down in their movement when the environment is acidic.